How did I end up here? Lying in your arms, watching city lights turn to stars.
To this day, I still consider Overwatch one of my favourite games of all time, thanks to all the memories I've had with it and the amazing friends I've made along the way. And while those things can be considered a byproduct of Overwatch in a sort of correlation not causation kind of way, that doesn't mean I don't love the game itself, because, well, I obviously still do. Hell, I'm probably one of the few creators left on this platform that still makes Overwatch content, even in the year 2022. So if that weren't evidence enough for my love for this game, then I don't know what is. I'm pretty sure I've had this spiel enough lately, but it does need to be said, especially for a video like this that could give off the wrong impression. See, Overwatch has always been a divisive game, one way or another, but one of those reasons for why in the game's almost 6 years of existence has been its hero balancing. Straight to the point, at times, balancing can be wishy-washy at best, full-on incompetent at worst. Now, that's not to say there haven't been so-called golden ages in Overwatch, one such period happening in late 2020 where Genji got buffed and everything seemed to fall into place just right to make the Overwatch experience feel great. I feel the game hadn't had in a good while, according to most people. However, this little period of history didn't last more than a week. Well, it actually did, but it only felt like it lasted a week anyway, with a certain group of players, probably support players, kind of forcing the devs' hands to change Genji back to how he was through whining and enough complaining. And before you get on to me about honing in on a specific group and being unnecessarily harsh, I am a support main myself, so I have full right to criticise my own people. Sorry, that was a little too toxic of me. But anyway, yeah. Hero balancing is a mess a lot of time, and it really makes me afraid for Overwatch 2's PvP, considering what they have in store for heroes like Sombra, we'll get to her, in the ways of changes. But on the subject of changes, I had an idea a couple months back to make a fun little video on some possible changes that could be made to certain Overwatch heroes to maybe make the experience a little better for people. And to put this up front before I potentially get any shit for it, I am not a game designer, so my knowledge of balancing in actual game design is, of course, limited. I am also not an Overwatch pro. I mean, have you seen my rank? But even having said all of that, I just thought it would be fun to tackle a subject like this and give some insight from someone who's spent a terrifying amount of hours on Overwatch throughout the years. What I'm trying to say is, even though I can't put it into practice, I know my stuff, and at this point I feel qualified enough to drop some real knowledge on you all. Alright, that makes me sound like a know-it-all. I'm really not. I'm just some guy with ideas that could be good, but who knows. We'll have to see. And speaking of which, why don't we get to them? My main goal is to address the more problematic heroes of Overwatch, but I also want to touch on some others that I feel could also be nerfed or buffed in some way, or perhaps even both. And yes, I have actually put some of these changes through other people, namely my friend circle, and don't worry, I don't support echo chambers. I fear this could be a long one, so with that said, let's begin. Here are what I think are easy fixes for various Overwatch heroes. Never look down on the classics, as they say, and boy are they right, because Bastion is and always has been an ever-present problem in Overwatch. And this goes without saying, but it's because of Bastion's playstyle, that being one of camping. No one likes the camping strategy, no matter what the game. It's a universally hated strat, and Bastion is camping incarnate. How do you play Bastion? Simple. Set up in sentry form and somewhere preferably with a shield tank, like with Reinhardt or even Orchestra, and just have at it, shredding down any opponents in front of you as you gain an easy ticket to play the game. Now, yeah, of course, I'm guilty of playing Bastion a lot too, I think we all are, but oftentimes we don't become aware of the problems that are right in front of us until, well, they're right in front of us, staring us down, and that's kind of what this video is about. Acknowledging the blinding flaws amongst the blinding positives. Ever since Bastion was buffed to have a shorter transformation time into sentry form and 300 ammo up from 200, a strange way to make a change to an already powerful hero, he's been even more of a problem. Now, honestly, we could just make it so Bastion remained in his recon form, no longer being able to transform into his sentry form, but that would kind of know what Bastion is as a character and arguably make him a lot less fun and interesting to play. Rather, let's go for a relatively easy nerf. Reduce his ammo count in sentry form from 300 to 250. Why not just revert it back to 200, you ask? Well, though it may not seem like a significant enough nerf, in the long run it can make all the difference. Bastion can easily burn through 300 ammo as is, but 300 ammo is way too much of a resource for Bastion to be able to just sit there and do his thing, so a nerf like this would hopefully solve the issue somewhat and require more of a careful playstyle, rather than a mindless one. So Brigitte's a hero I don't tend to feature much on this channel, at least not anymore that is. I think the most notable appearance she had on here was in my hero guide for her back in 2018, yeah, remember those? Ah, the good old days. Anyway, when it comes to Overwatch's most problematic heroes, Brigitte's definitely one of them and always has been. I would argue she's a little less of a problem now than she was back in the day where she could just infinitely heal allies with her repair pack ability. That has since been nerfed to only 3 uses at a time, with each one taking 6 seconds to recharge, but even so, it hasn't been enough to quell her overall annoying presence. It doesn't take a genius to figure this one out, but Brigitte's biggest problem is her shield bash ability, aka a stun ability. Overwatch is pretty rampant with these kinds of abilities nowadays, so that alone makes it a problem, but combine that with her passive ability, Inspire, which heals not only her, but her allies too in circles radius when Brigitte does damage, and she's a very easy hero to do damage with, and it really becomes a problem. And so her immortal presence brings the question, how can she be balanced better in accordance with the rest of the roster? As easy as it would be for me to just say, remove her, we're not removing her, it's just, no, that's too easy of a solution. Instead, increase the cooldown of her Inspire ability by 1 second up to 2 seconds. Yeah, it has a cooldown apparently, don't worry, that was news to me too. With Inspire's radius of 20 meters and a duration of 6 seconds, a cooldown of just 1 second makes it too potent of an ability. And look, I'm not setting out to nerf heroes into the ground, I'm simply looking to balance them more. So I feel a slight increase to the cooldown could level Brigitte out, and require a little more thought to play, as opposed to just mindless flailing on the user side and suffering on the enemies, usually me. Look at it this way. Brigitte is more or less invincible in a lot of cases, or at least it feels that way when you fight against her anyway. Unless she gets hit with Anna's Byronade or your Reinhardt or Winston wants to be aggressive against her, which is usually a bad idea considering she's often surrounded by her team, she's living rent-free on the field. Doofus is a character ever made. He's always had a significant presence in the spotlight that is broken heroes, but in both senses, being too OP or too weak. But how can Doom be both at once exactly? Well, by that I mean he only works some of the time. It's you're either getting one shot by an enemy Doom who is not at full charge on his rocket punch, or you're playing Doom and the enemy just kind of slides across the wall when you hit them with a fully charged punch. There's just no in between. To put a few of the many flaws in perspective, I asked Resident Clown Parade Doom main Atom what the problems with Doom were exactly, because if anyone would know out of my immediate contacts, it's him, and well, here you go. Pause if you need to, but yeah, with that said, just make the damn character work properly. It's been almost 5 years at this point, come on. Like, sure, a character whose kit was designed as a sort of tribute to 2D fighting games of the past, such as Street Fighter, having a sort of rigid linearity to his playstyle does make sense in theory, but in execution it doesn't work well. It makes him unique for sure, but in this case unique isn't always good. Or is too good, depends on whether his abilities want to work that day. Genji, the kind of sort of catalyst for this video, and one who doesn't need much said for him, other than just reverting back to how he was following the June 16th, 2020 patch. If you don't know what I mean by this, then allow me to elaborate. In this patch, Genji had his shuriken damage increased from 28 to 30, but had his spread damage, or his secondary fire, reduced from 12 to 9. This was a way to balance him out slightly, so he's not overly powerful, you know. Also, in the April 6th, 2020 patch, Genji's shuriken recovery time, his firing rate, was buffed from 0.75 seconds to 0.65 seconds. Keep this in mind as well. But anyway, just over a month later of the June patch, on July 30th, 2020, the shuriken damage was decreased back to 28, and they also reverted his firing rate back to 0.75 seconds as well, like, what? I don't know if you know this, but nerfing the firing rate can greatly affect the DPS of a DPS hero. You nerf the firing rate, you nerf the damage output. It's a simple equation. So with that said, why didn't they just keep the shuriken damage the same? Like, just buff the shuriken damage back to 30. Simple. I couldn't be bothered to get gameplay footage for Hanzo because it's Hanzo, so enjoy whatever I put on screen instead. Honestly, I could just say remove Hanzo and be done there, but I'm gonna be fair. So anyway, do you remember the days of Hanzo's Scatter Arrow? Yeah, weren't they fun? Well, since then, Hanzo had that ability replaced with Storm Arrows. A pretty decent replacement honestly, giving Hanzo plenty of potency in close quarters, should he ever end up in them. However, in the January 6th, 2022 patch, they made it so the Storm Arrows ricochet once upon an impact, which is just unnecessary, my guy. As mentioned, the Storm Arrows are potent enough as is, doing 70 damage per arrow with 1 shot per 0.25 seconds, assuming you use all of them and in quick succession, so adding a ricochet effect just seems a bit overkill. Don't get me wrong, the ricochet effect isn't as effective as the ricochet effect on the scatter arrows, but when you get hit by one of them, you're gonna hate it, and it just makes an already powerful enough hero in the right hands more annoying to deal with, especially if they don't even have to face you head on. So yeah, just remove the storm arrow ricochet effects, it's that easy. Restore the drop tire thing. Easy. No, but seriously, for as much of an exploit as the drop tire thing can be considered, it rarely actually had much use, but it never outright broke the game or anything. It was just fun to use, so yeah, there you go. By the way, I never actually abused the drop tire exploit myself. It's only here because I recognise how pointless the removal of such a thing was in reality. Not a hero that has any immediate problems, but one that should be made even better / more fun. So, the experimental card. It's exactly what it sounds like. A way for the devs to experiment with potential hero changes without officially making the changes live, often with changes suggested by prominent players of the community. It can be fun a lot of the time, and there are some genuinely good ideas here and there, and one of them happens to be for Lucio. In the November 30th 2021 experimental patch notes, there was an emphasis on over-the-top hero changes, such ones like May's Cryo Freeze dealing 2000 damage to anyone that actually lands on with it. But while we'll get to her in a few moments, another one of these over-the-top changes was for Lucio's ultimate, Sound Barrier, dealing massive damage, to quote the patch notes themselves, to enemies that Lucio lands on top of with it. Now that sounds fun as all hell. Just add that in, that'd be a great time. So I'll be honest, May was kind of a last minute addition to this video. Like, as I was about to write the script, I was like, oh damn, I forgot about May. Now, in all honesty, I don't consider May a very problematic hero nowadays. I mean, the days of her being the devil of Overwatch are long gone at this point, with heroes since then kind of fading her presence as a problem in our minds into the background. But, of course, when you actually bring focus upon her once more, then the problems start to rear their heads. Or rather, just one. Her primary fire, which, if you didn't know, freezes enemies in place after a couple seconds, with the time prior having a slowing effect to the spray, making it harder for you to escape. Having said that, yeah, that's a problem. But there is a way to mitigate this, even if slightly, and that is to reduce the slowing effect. As of now, the initial slowing effect is negative 20% speed, then negative 2.85% per tick, up to a maximum speed reduction of negative 70%, so I'd say reduce the negative 20% speed reduction to just negative 10%, and a maximum negative 70% speed reduction to negative 60%, but keep the negative 2.85% per tick thing because why not? Good lord, that was hard to say. Numbers, they are sure are a thing. Kinda like this is an Overwatch hero guide or something with me going in depth. Haha, no. I'll do my best here to not come off as biased considering, well, you know. But yeah, Mercy is a problematic hero in Overwatch and not necessarily for the reason you may think. Your first guess as to why might be her Resurrect ability, which to this day is still one of the most potent abilities in Overwatch, being able to turn the tides of battle if used correctly. And yeah, sure, it's maybe too powerful of an ability, but I feel like it's balanced well enough thanks to its 30-second cooldown time, its casting time of 1.75 seconds, which is a significant casting time in a game like Overwatch, and for the fact that a good use of it can be very situational. To be honest, my hand's being forced somewhat here because I asked the legend that is Atom himself what heroes, other than the obvious ones, that he considers problematic, and his answer was Mercy, with his explanation on screen right now. I don't consider the pocketing playstyle an issue at all because different playstyles account for different skill levels. Overwatch isn't some kind of a hierarchy of success. Sure, you could argue that there's a vastly different skill level between a Grandmaster Genji and a Grandmaster Mercy, but with how Overwatch is designed as a hero-based shooter, this problem was going to be present no matter how you look at it. Don't misunderstand me, I'm not excusing it, but just because two heroes have two different playstyles, that doesn't mean either one is undeserving of their success. Atom, I love you, I do, and this is the only time I will ever openly rip you, but, where was I? Oh, right, Mercy, yeah, just buff her healing back to 60 health per second, up from 50 and we'll go on, I guess. Honestly, there's not too much to say about Moira, other than what is the most obvious problematic aspect about her, and that's her Bionic Grasp, or rather, her secondary fire. Moira's secondary fire has her sap your house of enemies, while also restoring her own in the process, with a fair enough trade-off in how it works, dealing 50 damage per second, and restoring only 24 health per second. The ability itself isn't really the problem though, most of the range on the Bionic Grasp. It seems infinite most of the time, but it's actually got a max range of around 20 meters, which, by the way, is the same max length as Roadhog's hook ability, which is just insane honestly, like why? This could be easily fixed, however, by nerfing it by 5 meters down to a max range of 15 meters, or if you don't want to be too harsh, then a small reduction of 2 meters down to a max range of 18. Of course, combined with the soft lock-on effect that Bionic Grasp secondary fire has, a nerf to the max range shouldn't be too damaging. Again, I'm not out here trying to nerf heroes into the ground, I'm just trying to balance them out fairly. Make her do more than 5 damage per minute and we're all good. Make Earth Shatter work properly. Please, I'm begging you, fix it. Sometimes the full range of Shatter doesn't take effect, or sometimes it just sends enemies flying into the air, like, why? How does that even work? But yeah, just fix Shatter already, please. Right, so I have shit to say about Sigma here. So in an effort to reduce the impact of the seemingly ever-present shield meta in Overwatch, a lot of focus was put on reducing the total health of shields and or barriers, with Sigma's experimental barrier going from 1500 health prior to December 12, 2019 patch to just 700 by the August 13, 2020 patch, which is where it remains to this day. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with the reduction in health, but they took it a step further when they increased the cooldown of redeploying the experimental barrier from 1 second to 2.5 seconds in the January 12, 2021 patch, which not only removed the ability to deploy, call back and then redeploy the shield pretty much instantly, which was one of my favourite little things to do, but it was also just an unnecessary extra nerf. See, although the shield metal was a big problem at the time, in Sigma's case the experimental barrier wasn't the problem, but rather his ultimate, Graphenic Flux. Now, I love this ultimate. It's always been one of my favourites to use, just because of how powerful it makes you feel and how potent of an ultimate it can be, but therein lies the problem, its overall potency. Graphenic Flux is guaranteed to do at least 50% of the enemy's max health, so 100 damage if a 200 health hero is caught in it, while also doing extra damage upon casting the Flux, depending on whereabouts the enemies are in the casting circle. Now, the way to fix this is to have Flux do 40% of the enemy's max health instead of 50%, so there's one thing. But the other is to reduce the experimental barrier cooldown back to 1 second from 2.5 seconds. You can keep the barrier's health the same at 700, that's fine honestly, but there you go. Remove her. Now okay, but yeah, Sombra. Arguably the most problematic hero in Overwatch because of her kit. Not only can she go invisible, but she can also take away your abilities. Yeah, a hero that stops you from playing a game that sells itself on a unique hero-based gameplay. Amazing, truly. Sombra's like all the problems of the game rolled into one, and everything people didn't want in the game. I'm sure you've seen the meme by this point, but it perfectly encapsulates its dev's thought process because, yeah, what kind of decision maker went on here and why exactly? Again though, as I've mentioned, I don't want to remove heroes because that's the coward's way out. No. In the case of Sombra though, I think it's hard to nerf her accordingly without totally neutering the character. I mean, remove her hacking ability and what she then? A more tolerable hero, sure, but one who has lost her identity. But as for improvements, revert her invisibility back to being on a 6-second timer, which was the case prior to the July 24th, 2018 patch. This should encourage a more strategic playstyle again, forcing you to think about when the best time to use it is, and if you're in the right spot to take advantage of it. And I guess increase hacks cooldown to 5 minutes, that should fix her. Ah, Symmetra, how I feel so bad for your voice actor. Like, seriously, I think we're past the point now, but don't throw your hate of the character at the VA, it's not their fault. Okay, I make it sound as if Symmetra has always been in an atrocious state, and I guess in some senses, I wouldn't exactly be lying. She's always been annoying to fight against, the feeling of annoyance elevated by her very mixed aggressive but defensive playstyle, thanks to her various abilities like sentry turrets and her teleporter, all combined with her ability to just do massive damage in a second by just holding down right trigger wherever to charge her beam to level 2, which can also charge her shields by the way, so what the hell. Okay, so in terms of changes I'd make to this even, okay I'll stop being harsh now. I was thinking that you remove the ability to have her beam gain charge off her shields, or, alternatively, you can keep the charge gain, but have her beam do no damage to them. A fair trade-off, wouldn't you say? And as well as that, change the sentry turret so they no longer do damage to enemies, but instead heal your allies. That idea may force her back to the support class, but there are 17 heroes in the damage role, including Symmetra, so losing just one to another class, the same one that went through a dramatic class change before anyway, wouldn't be too bad. Buff his turret so it's as big as the ones you can see in Overwatch's uprising PvE mode. That would be fun. But it still has 250 health like a normal topping turret just for the memes. Remove him. Here we are, the final one, and it's Zenyatta. As a former Zen main back in the day, I know struggles that come with playing this hero all too well, and the most obvious one is his lack of mobility compared to other support heroes. Sure, Ana isn't too much better off, for example, but she at least has her sleep dart ability to help remove her from the conflict, while Zen just has nothing. And the whole lack of mobility thing is a sticking point for me. I could have just suggested maybe buffing the potency of his Discord Orb to increase damage dealt to an inflicted enemy by 20% up from 10%, but Zenyatta is fighting capable as is. He just lacks any feasible escape when rushed. Part of me wants to create a new ability for Zenyatta just to get around this problem, but honestly, I think a simple movement speed buff could help immensely. The average movement speed of Overwatch heroes is 1.7 meters per second, the only exceptions being Genji and Tracer, who both have a movement speed of 1.75 meters per second. So, having said that, just buff Zen's movement speed to 1.75 meters per second as well. You may think it's kind of a stupid buff, but I think it would be funny, honestly, and besides, it would generally help Zenyatta out a bit, and it's certainly better than nothing, that's for sure. Wow, we're finally at the end, just damn. I know for sure this won't be the longest video on the channel in this kind of style, but man has this been a labour of love and has been painful in a lot of ways. Okay, no, I don't want to imply anything bad by saying that, but this video did kind of fall into production hell a few times for a number of reasons, so I'm finally glad to have it done, because yeah, this has been in planning for at least a couple of months now, as I said at the start. Nowhere near as bad as some of the things stuck in planning hell for me, but nevertheless. And before I finish, I just want to say again that this has all just been for fun really, so don't take anything I've suggested for changes as the be all and end all, because, well, I'm just some guy who just happens to know a lot about a certain game and just wanted to put some of that out there. Big thank you to Atom for some of the input he's had on a couple of the entries in this video, and a big thank you to both It's Little Stick and Nova Explains for listening to me talk about my stupid ideas for hero changes, and for listening to me suffer while playing Overwatch for longer than any normal human being should. Now, if you excuse me, I'm hopefully going to take a break from Overwatch for a little bit. Let's see how long that one lasts.